You are welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Alamiti Adini, and today we'll be treating a different topic, and it will be specially for Jamb. And we'll be looking at Jamb past questions basically on differential calculus. And I'll be mixing it with the explanation and also the past questions. Now, under differential calculus, we should know that we don't have anything called dy dx. There is nothing called dy dx. What we have basically is the d of the left hand side over what? The d of the right hand side. That means if we have a function of y is equals to x, what is the function we are having on the left hand side? That is y. And what is the function we are having on the right hand side? That is x. And that is why we have it as well, dy dx. If we have u is equals to v, I'll be very fast because the major thing we need to do is to solve past questions. So this will not give us dy dx, this will give us the u over what? The v. Just because we are having u on the left hand side and we have v on the right hand side. Now, the only thing you need to know under differential calculus is this, that we have a general formula under differential. And what is the general formula? The formula is what? Ans into what? N minus 1. And what is your A? We all know this. Your A stands for constant, your N stands for what? Power. Now, let's start to look at questions under the explicit function. So when we are talking of the explicit function, there is a question in Jamb past question. They say if y is equals to x squared plus x, we are told to find the value of what? Of dy dx. So how can you solve this? This will just give us what? Dy over dx. Now let me tell you, you don't need to make use of the formula again. Just multiply and subtract. 1 times 2 is what? Is 2x. What is 2 minus 1? 1. And the differential of a constant, x will give us what? A constant. Do we get it? And this will give us what? 2x plus what? 1. And that is all. The same here, they ask a question again. They say if y is equals to x squared minus 3x plus 4, they say we should find the value of what? Of dy dx at x is equals to 5. So the same thing. So how can we solve this? You differentiate this. If you differentiate, what do we have? We have it as what? 2x minus 3. And after differentiating, you will now put your x to what? To 5. So insert your x as 5. 2 times 5 will give us 10 minus 3. And what is 10 minus 3? That will give us 7. Do you get that? It's simple. Now let's look at this third question. They said if y is equals to 4x cubed minus 2x squared plus x, they said we should find the value of what? Of dy dx. So how can you solve this? That will give us dy dx is equals to 4 times 3 is 12. What is 3 minus 1? 2. This time this will give us what? Minus 4x. And what is the differential of a constant x? That will give us constant. So it's simple. Now let's look at the fourth question. That here also they said if y is equals to x squared minus 1 over x, they said we should find the value of what? Of dy dx. Mind you, you cannot differentiate until you are having a constant and what? A power. But this function is not having a constant and a power. So what will you do? You make it to have a constant and a power. That will mean this will come up and that will give us s minus 1. And then we can now make use of the differential formula. That means you multiply and subtract. 1 times 2 is what? Is 2x. What is 2 minus 1? 1. Minus times minus 1 will give us plus s. Minus 1 will give us minus 2. And you know this also is indices. We cannot leave it like that. That minus will drag it down. And if minus drag it down, what do we have? We have it as what? 2s in plus what? Plus 1 over what? Over s. Do we get it? And that explains what? The explicit function. Now, for us to move forward again, we are now going to be looking at questions involving product function. We are looking at questions involving what? Product function. Now, I know you all know product rule, but you are doing Jamb. Jamb cannot give you explicit function involving product rule. Do you get that? They will give you a question involving product rule, but we don't make use of product rule formula to solve. It will waste your time. Because for Jamb, the basic thing you need to know for Jamb is you must make use of 40 seconds to solve a single question. So that means we need to look for other shortcuts. Now let's look at this. They say if y is equals to 2x squared into x minus 1, they say we should find the value of dy dx at x is equals to minus 1. So some people will be making use of product, which will waste your time. Since you can expand the function and then you differentiate. So just expand. This time this will just give us what? 2x cubed minus 2x squared. Do you get that? And we cannot differentiate it. So differentiate is that will give us dy dx is equals to what? 6x squared minus 4x. And this is the answer. They now said at what? X is equals to minus 1. So put your x as minus 1. What is minus 1 squared? That will give us 1. 1 times 6 will give us 6. Minus 4 times minus 1 will give us plus 4. And what is 6 plus 4? We have it as 10. Do you get that? It's simple. Without wasting time, let's look at this. They said if x is equals to 2 plus 3t into 5t minus 4. They said find the x dt at t is equals to 4 over 5 seconds. So if we are having this, they are not giving us to waste our time. That means don't make use of product rule. You are solving Jamb. That means what are we going to do? Just expand. So if you expand this function, this time this will give us what? 10t minus 8 plus what? 15t squared minus what? 12t. And our x will give us what? 15t squared. This and this will give us what? Minus 2t minus 8. Do you get that? Don't make use of product rule formula. So if you differentiate that, that will give us what? Dx dt to give us what? 30t minus 2. And that is that. And then you put your t as what? As 4 over 3. That will give us 4 over 5 minus 2. And this will give us 6. 6 times 4 is what? 24 minus 2. And that will give us 22. Looking at this, you can see that it's simple. Some people will be wasting their time making use of the product rule formula. You don't need to make use of product rule formula to solve this. Now let's look at this. They said the derivative of 2x plus 1 and 3x plus 1 is dash. So this is also is looking like product rule formula. Don't make use of product rule. Just expand and then you differentiate. So expanding this, what do we have? 6x squared plus what? Plus 5x plus 1. And then you differentiate. Your dy dx is going to give us what? 12x plus 5. Do you get that? It's simple. Now also, we don't need to waste time. Let's move on to something we term as what? As a function of a function. Some textbook we term it as a chain rule. And some we term it as what? A substitution method. So if we are having these three, Jamb also we ask you, there you don't need to make use of the long principle. We all know the long principle that your dy dx will give us what? Dy du times du dx. But all those things will not help you guys. The only shortcut you need to know is what? Is ans into what? Into n minus 1. Now what is your a? Before, your a stands for constant, but now your a will change. Your a will now be the differential of the bracket. Do we get that? Your n still remains your power, but your x will now be the bracket itself. Again, your a is the differential of the bracket, your n is your power, and your x is what? Is the bracket itself. For example, they say if y is equals to 1 plus x all squared, they say we should find the value of what? Of dy dx. How can you solve it? Just move on straight to your final answer. It's simple. Don't waste your time. Your a, differentiate this bracket, we have it as 1, times n, which is your power, times x, which is the bracket itself. N minus 1 will give us 1. So if you solve this, what do we have? 2 into what? Into 1 plus x. That is all. So for instance, again, let's look at this. They said if y is equals to 2x plus 2, a power of 3. They said we should find the value of what? Of dy dx. Don't make use of any long principle. Just differentiate the bracket. That is your a. That will give us 2 times n, the power, times x, which is the bracket itself. N minus 1 will give us 2. And if you multiply this, what do we have? 6 into what? Into 2x plus 2. Also, you can see that it's simple. Now let's see some more Jamb question. There is a year they ask that if y is equals to 1 minus 2x a power of 3, they said we should find the value of what? Of dy over dx. So if you want to solve dy dx, we have said it, don't make use of any chain rule. Just make use of the shortcut. Your a, what is your a? Differentiate the bracket. If you differentiate this, what do we have? Minus 2 times n, which is the power, times x, which is the bracket itself, and then n minus 1. So if you solve this, what do we have? Minus 6 into what? 1 minus 2x, the power of 2. Do we get that? It's simple. Now, Jamb also we ask you a question involving a quotient rule. They will never give you a quotient rule, but they will give you some questions involving quotient rule. And some innocent students will be making use of the quotient rule formula, wasting their time. Don't forget you have 40 seconds to solve the question. For example, there is a year they asked, they said if y is equals to x a power of 7 minus x a power of 5 over x a power of 4. They said we should find the value of what? Of dy over dx. This looks like a quotient rule formula. It's not. Don't forget in mathematics, if we have 4 minus 2 over 2, what will happen? This will give us 4 over 2 minus 2 over 2. I mean, you just separate them. That's the same thing we are going to do for this one. That means you separate them. What do we have? X7 over what? X4 minus what? X5 over what? X4. We are simplifying. And if you want to solve this, this is what? Is indices. And that will give us what? X cubed minus X. We cannot differentiate this, but we can differentiate this. So what is the differential of this? Dy dx will give us what? 3x squared minus 1. We get that. It's simple. So let's look at this again. They say if y is equals to 2x a power of 5 minus 4x a power of 3 divided by x. They said we should find the value of what? Dy dx. X is common. So x, if you remove x here, that x will cancel x. So what do we have? That will give us 2x a power of 4 minus 4x a power of 2. And then you differentiate. That will give us what? Dy over dx will give us 8x a power of 3 minus what? Minus 8x. And Jamb cannot leave their answer like this. 8x is common. And that will give us what? X squared minus 1. We get that. So it's not that Jamb is tough. Jamb is not tough. Their questions are what? Are easy. You just need to understand some shortcuts. You need to understand how to save time. Don't make use of product rule formula and don't make use of what? Of quotient rule formula. For product rule formula, if a function, if you can expand it, then you differentiate. We have looked at function of a function. Don't make use of dy over du times du over dx. Just make use of the shortcut. A(n)s into what? Into n minus 1. What is your a? Your differential of the bracket. What is your n? The power. What is the x? The bracket itself. Without wasting time, let's move on. But before we look at the next question, they asked this question again that year. They said we have this. They said we should find the value of what? Of dy dx. This is what? A chain rule. Don't make use of chain rule. Just make use of the formula. What is your a? Your a is the differential of the bracket that will give us 2 times n, which will give us the power, times x, which is the bracket itself. N minus 1, that will give us 2 minus 1. And if you solve this, what do we have? 4 into what? Into 1 plus 2x. Do we get it? It's simple. So let's move on. And that is all about the explicit function. So now we are through with the explicit function. And without wasting time, we are looking at what? The trigonometric what? Function. Now, Jamb will stress you with a lot of questions under trig function. But under trig function, you need to know 4 types of differential for trig function. Mind you, we are still going to drop a video on trigonometry. Trigonometry goes beyond the SOHCAHTRA. Many of us just understand SOHCAHTRA. It goes beyond that. Now, for the sake of this video, we have to understand the differential of the following. Now, we have to understand the meaning of sin x, the meaning of cos x. And again, we need to note that what? Our tan x is having a formula that relates with sine and cos. That means your tan is what? A sine over what? Over cos. And also, we need to know the differential of what? Of sec x. So please, this table, we need to know it. Now, if you are differentiating cos x, so is sin x, the differential of sin x is what? Is cos x. If you are differentiating cos x, the differential of cos x is what? Is minus sin x. And if you are differentiating tan x, the differential of tan x is what? Sec squared x. And if you are differentiating sec x, the differential of sec x is what? Is sec x tan x. So without knowing anything, you need to know these 4 things. Now let's look at Jamb. There was a year they said that if y is equal to sin x, differentiate. We don't need to waste time. What is your dy dx? Your dy dx will give us cos x. But I love this question. There was a year they said if y is equal to sin x over cos x, they said we should find the value of dy dx. Tan x will be in the option. If you pick tan x, you miss it. Because your expression for sine x over cos x itself will give us tan x. Not that the answer is tan x. If you now differentiate this, that will give us dy dx to give us what is the differential of tan x. That will give us x squared x. So without wasting time, they will also mix it with what? With a function of a function. Like this, we have if y is equals to cos minus 4x. They say find the value of what? Of dy over dx. Now, Jamb will give you 40 seconds. Don't stop. What you have to do here is make use of this shortcut. Just differentiate any function in front of the trig function. So if you differentiate the function in front of the trig function, differentiate this, what do we have? Minus 4. You will now come back to that trig function to differentiate. So what if you now differentiate cos? What is the differential of cos? That will give us minus sine. Which angle? That will give us minus 4x. Do we get it? You differentiate the function in front of the trig function, we have it as this. You will now come back to that trig function to differentiate. The differential of that trig function will give us minus sine the angle. Do we get that? And if you multiply this, what do we have? We have it as what? 4 sine what? Minus 4x. Please and please, while solving Jamb, you need to be very, very careful, because in Jamb, 4 sine minus 4x will be in the option. Minus 4 sine minus 4x will be in the option. 4 sine 4x will be in the option. Minus 4 sine 4x will be in the option. That means when you are solving Jamb, there is no way you are trying to solve a particular question. You will surely see your answer in the option. So it's just for you to know whether you are right or whether you are what? You are wrong. So let's look at this. They say if y is equals to cos 3x, how can we find our dy dx? So without wasting time, if you differentiate this, what do we have? 3. Differentiate cos minus sine 3x. Without wasting time, we have y is equals to 3 cos what? 4x. What is your dy dx? Don't solve. Just differentiate this. 4. 4 will come and meet 3. 4 times 3 will give us 12. Differentiate cos minus sine 4x. So let's continue to solve. Yeah, it was this year that they asked this particular question. They said if this is equals to this. Now let me try to frame it. They said find x. No, sorry. They said find dy over dx if your x is equals to pi. Wow. So how can we solve this? It's simple. That means your dy dx will give us, you differentiate this function. If you differentiate that function, what do we have? That will give us 1 over 3. And then you now differentiate the trig function. If you differentiate the trig function, that will give us minus sine x over 3. And if you multiply this, what do we have? Minus sine x over 3. But now we need to know something. We need to know that anytime we are talking of pi, we have 2 types of pi. We have 3.142 and we have it as what? As 1/8. And anytime you are dealing with angle or trigonometry, your pi is what? Is 1/8. So that means the pi you are going to put here will be what? Pi over 3. And that will give us what? 1/8. And what is pi? Sorry, what is 180 over 3? That will give us 60. Again, Jamb will not allow you to make use of calculator. They will not leave the answer like this. And what is sine 60? You need to know that sine 60 is what? The square root of 3 over 2. Do we get that? It's simple. So let's look at more questions pertaining to Jamb. There was a year they asked this question. They said y is equals to 3 cos 2x minus sine 4x. They said we should find dy dx. How can you find your dy dx? We give us, differentiate is 2. 2 times 3 will give us 6. Differentiate cos minus sine 2x minus differentiate 4x 4. Differentiate sine cos 4x. It's simple. And many of you will be lying that Jamb is tough. You can say that Jamb is not tough. It's just for you to understand the basis and for you to understand where they will ask their question from. And let's look at this here also. They said if y is equals to sine 2x cubed plus 3x minus 4. They said we should find the value of what? Of dy over dx. And how can you solve this? That means we are going to differentiate, and I've given you the shortcut. Differentiate the function in front. if you differentiate that 6x squared plus 3, come back to differentiate sign. What is the differential of sign? Cos 2x plus 3x minus 4. It's simple. But Jamb also will now stress you with some questions. You know, I said they will give you 40 seconds. All these questions we have been solving, it will not take you more than 10 seconds to solve it. But there are some questions that Jamb will give you that they will stress you. I said something, I said they will not ask you product rule. But please note that they will ask you product rule, but their product rule is this. They will mix an explicit function with a trig function. For instance, they say if y is equals to x sine x, they say find the y dx. Do we get it? That is the only product rule that they can ask you. So if they are asking you this, what is product rule? You make your u to be x, and then you make your v to be what? Sine x. And after you differentiate, your du dx will give us what? 1. What is your dv dx? If you differentiate sine, what is the differential? Cos x. And what is your dy dx? The formula for product rule is what? U dv over dx plus v du over dx. And what is your u times dv? This time this will give us what? X cos x. And this time this will give us what? Plus what? Sine x. You can see that is simple. And also there was a year they asked this question. They said if y is equals to sine x minus x cos x, they said we should differentiate this. So how can you differentiate? Your dy dx will give us what is the differential of sine? The differential of sine is what? Is cos minus what is now your x cos x. Sorry, we have not solved x cos x, but we can do it. Let me give you the shortcut. They said the formula is what? U, which is your x. Dv dx, differentiate cos minus sine x. Do we get a u dv dx plus v, which is cos x. Du dx will give us 1. And if you multiply 2 by minus, that will give us plus what? X sine x minus cos x. This will cancel this, and that will give us what? X sine x. And the last question for the first aspect that we want to look at is this. I love this question. There was a year they said if y is equals to cos x minus sine x all squared, they said we should find the value of dy dx. So for us to solve this question, I know many students will be wondering, how are we going to solve this? It's simple. If only you know some aspects under the trigonometry. So the first thing you have to do is to expand. And if you expand this, that will give us what? Cos squared x minus 2 sine x cos x plus sine squared x. That's the first thing. And also we need to know that anytime you are adding cos squared x and sine squared x, that will give us what? That will give us 1. Do we get that? Sine squared x plus cos squared x is 1 under the trigonometric function. And that will give us 2 sine x cos x. And also, if you don't know trigonometric function, you cannot solve this. This also is termed as something. There is something we term as a double angle. What is a double angle? We have what? We have sine 2x and we have cos 2x. Sine 2x is having the function as what? As 2 sine x cos x. And this will change to what? 1 minus what? Minus sine 2x. And then we can now differentiate this. So what is now your dy dx? Differentiate a constant, 0. Differentiate sine. This is a function of a function. Differentiate the function in front. That will give us 2. Differentiate sine. That will give us cos. And what is the function? Do we get that? And it's simple. So that will be the end of the shortcut for past questions for differential calculus. And all these are the questions you can see in your past questions from 2000 to 2020. And if you can know how to solve this and you can know how to solve them conveniently on your own, sincerely, there is nothing called Jamb. Go and pass that Jamb. Please and please don't forget to click on that subscription button. And also, we will try to release a video on differential calculus, basically the application of differential calculus. Don't miss it. We'll be releasing videos on the rate of change, the turning point, where I'll be teaching you the maximum and the minimum point, mixing it with what the maximum and the minimum value. I love